Niels, welcome back.
Hi, Nikki. Welcome back. Still in South Africa, I see.
Still in South Africa, enjoying the
Great.
sun.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about measurements.
hmm
Um, and I think oftentimes within companies, people think that change happens overnight, but this is really not
Yeah.
feasible. So what do you tell them in terms of a timeline for change?
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. I think all of them know this, but still they want to get some sort of sense of, okay, so how long is this going to take?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, typically it never starts and it never stops, I tell them. So you always need to you always need to work on culture and behaviors, and therefore it never finishes. And every time we are consulting companies, this is what we see. There's an initiative, maybe it's not called culture, but for instance, on
Mm-hmm.
safety or on ethical culture or whatever. But it takes years if you want to go from A to B. If it's really a large transformation, then yeah, you need to take years for that. What we typically do see though is that there's different stages that people go through. Or on an organizational level, there's some sort of a level where you feel, okay, the organization is aware, at least, that something needs to change. And this could be that they're aware of the new strategy, that they can see, for instance, we had that obviously with the Russia-Ukraine crisis
Mm-hmm.
and the energy prices going up, that people feel and sense from themselves and therefore also for the company, okay, something needs to change. Then there's a distinct phase of willingness that people, okay, we see there's a need to change. We also perceive that change as something positive, or we can get something out of this. Then that next stage is what we call ability. So people feel that they're able, so they see the change, and they know that it's necessary. They also perceive it positively. And now they're also
Mm-hmm.
able for themselves, they have the tools, they see that resources are getting into the company to make that happen, that they can change. And only then do you see, and that's the last stage, that you see the results. Then you actually see the culture changing from where you were to what it is that you would like to have. Then it connects to the strategy. Managers often want to have that last stage immediately. But
Yes.
when you tell them there's a couple of stages that you can go through and it takes time, and you as a leader, you also need to be very much aware that you probably are a bit further in these stages than the rest of the people are, then you can easily, let's say, or more easy, guide a leadership team and an organization through these stages of maturity. Yeah.
So this is then a specific model that you follow with different steps.
It's a specific model, tweaked, I would say, towards typically culture change. I mean, there's so many models out there, and I'm not saying that this is the only one or the holy grail. It's the one that we use because we have all these measurement tools that are then linked to the stage of awareness, or the stage of willingness, or the stage of ability, and the
Right.
stage of results. Yeah.
And do you maybe have an example per stage for us?
Yeah, I can give you an example per stage, and I will add on that, but something that we typically do actually covers, let's say, the first three stages of maturity. So awareness and
Right.
willingness and ability. So what we typically do there is that we send what we call a mood monitor into the company. Not everyone. So we do pulse checks, or we take, we call them buckets of people, but that's not the nicest way to call them. But we take cross sections of the company where, let's say, every 2 weeks, a separate section of the company is getting these questions. And if you do that in a representative way, then you still have a feel or a sense of where the whole organization is. And we ask them questions around awareness. So, for instance, are you familiar with the new strategy, or are you familiar with the culture transformation, or preferably the label for the culture transformation that we're using? So questions around awareness. Also some questions around willingness. So are you positive about this? Can you explain this to a client? Can you explain this to a colleague? Because that basically tells you if people are positive about the change.
Mm-hmm.
And do you see your own role in this? And then when we start asking them about tooling and resources, and you feel that you're able or capable of it. So it's all perception. But then when we connect them with other internal and external metrics, internal, it could be the use of specific hashtags so that we know, okay, the awareness about this culture program is growing.
Mm-hmm.
The response that there is internally on a post from the CEO on the topic of culture. again, awareness. Willingness, it could be we're organizing events, right? It could be a values week that I spoke about in another video. It could be that we're organizing boot camps. Do we see that people are participating there? Or do we see pockets of the organization where this willingness is not growing? Ability, again, do we see leaders bringing, through storytelling, for instance, the whole story of change to their teams? Do we also see that they perceive their culture to be growing, let's say, on the topics that we would like to see, on the values, for instance? And only then do we move to results. And results is a different stage, I would say, because this is where we actually start linking it to the corporate KPIs, to the strategic KPIs. So if you want to reduce costs, it's not the most esoteric KPI, I would say, but then you link that to a value, for instance, collaboration. You start collaborating more. That finds its way into reduction in recruitment costs, for instance, because we find it easier to attract people. Hence, it's linked to the strategy. But that's very intrinsic or very
Right.
additional work that you need to do to really link it there. Yeah.
Good. Well, I can imagine that it gives a lot of insight and that it's very usable within companies.
It does, especially, sorry, I need to add that if you link it to external perspective as well. So if you say, I want to be more customer centric, then obviously that needs to be linked to the customer perceiving you to be more customer centric as well. Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
You too. Bye-bye.